The Colosseum roars. Shackled prisoners stumble onto the sand, eyes wide with terror as lions are unleashed from iron cages. From his gilded throne, Emperor Commodus, draped in Hercules' lion skin, leans forward with a smile. This was no gladiatorial contest, but a slaughter staged for his amusement. He wasn't content to rule Rome. He turned its greatest arena into a theater of cruelty, feeding human lives to beasts in the name of his own glory. Rome. The name conjures images of power, glory, and an empire that shaped the world. It was an age of titans, of philosopher kings, and brilliant generals. An era of peace and prosperity, so profound it was called the Pax Romana. But every golden age has to end. And for Rome, the beginning of the end came not with an invasion or a disaster, but with the reign of one man. A man whose name would become synonymous with depravity, whose actions would undo a century of stability, and whose legacy was not one of gold, but as the historian Cassius Dio famously wrote, of iron and rust. This is the story of Commodus, the son of the philosopher king, the gladiator emperor, and the tyrant who brought Rome to its knees. To understand the monster, you first have to understand the man. Born on August 31st, 161 AD, Lucius Aurelius Commodus was special from the start. He was the first emperor in nearly a century to be born to the purple, meaning his father, the great Marcus Aurelius, was already on the throne at the time of his birth. He was the son of a living legend, the heir apparent to the most powerful man on earth. Marcus Aurelius was the last of the 5 good emperors, a Stoic philosopher whose personal writings, the Meditations, reveal a man obsessed with duty, justice, and self-control. He was the embodiment of Roman virtue. He spent years on the brutal northern frontiers defending the empire and did everything in his power to groom his son for the job. Commodus got the best education and the finest tutors. At just 15, he was made co-emperor, the youngest in Roman history up to that point. He joined his father on grueling military campaigns, seeing the realities of war and leadership up close. It looked like the perfect apprenticeship. The philosopher king was shaping his heir to ensure a stable future for Rome. But even then, there were troubling signs. Whispers followed the young prince. Rumors, likely fueled by his later enemies, that he wasn't the true son of the philosophical Marcus, but the illegitimate child of a gladiator. True or not, the story hinted at a fundamental truth about Commodus. He was nothing like his father. The historian Cassius Dio, who knew Commodus personally, offered a more tragic view. He was not naturally wicked, Dio wrote, but, on the contrary, as guileless as any man that ever lived. His great simplicity, however, together with his cowardice, made him the slave of his companions. It seems Commodus was easily led. He wasn't interested in the burdens of statecraft. He craved the roar of the crowd, the thrill of the chariot race, and the endless pursuit of pleasure. In March of 180 AD, on the cold Danube frontier, Marcus Aurelius died. At just 18 years old, Commodus was now the sole ruler of the Roman Empire. For a moment, there was hope. He was, after all, his father's son. But that hope died quickly. Against the advice of his father's seasoned generals, who believed victory over the Germanic tribes was close, Commodus negotiated a peace treaty. While the terms were favorable to Rome and Marcus may have already been exploring a settlement, the move was seen by the old guard as a rejection of his father's hard-fought war. Commodus had no interest in the grim realities of the frontier. He wanted the adoration of the capital. On October 22, 180 AD, he entered Rome in a grand triumph. The people, weary of endless war, hailed him as a hero. They had no idea they were welcoming the end of an era. The Pax Romana was fracturing. The age of iron and rust had begun. Back in Rome, Commodus was happy to let others handle the tedious business of governing. He left the day-to-day administration to a series of favorites, first a chamberlain named Sauterus, and later his powerful praetorian prefects. He, meanwhile, devoted himself to palace pleasures and his massive harem. He ignored the Senate, the ancient institution that, while mostly symbolic, still represented Rome's elite. This neglect quickly bred resentment. The senators who had served his father watched in alarm as the young emperor abandoned his duties. The event that arguably turned him from a neglectful ruler into a paranoid tyrant came from inside his own family. In 182 AD, his own sister, Aeneia Lucilla, orchestrated a conspiracy to have him killed. Lucilla was ambitious and proud. Once an empress herself, she resented her brother's incompetence and the honors given to his wife, Empress Crispina. She and a group of senators hatched a plot. The assassin, Quintianus, cornered Commodus in a dark passageway to the amphitheater. But instead of just striking, he made a fatal theatrical mistake. He brandished his dagger and shouted, "This is what the Senate sends you." That one moment of bravado was all Commodus's bodyguards needed. Quintianus was seized before he could land a blow. The attempt on his life failed, but it shattered Commodus's mind. The betrayal, especially from his sister, unleashed a firestorm of paranoia. Quintianus and the other plotters were executed. Lucilla was exiled and murdered soon after. But Commodus didn't stop there. The assassin's cry, "This is what the Senate sends you," became a death warrant for the entire senatorial class in his eyes. He unleashed a reign of terror, executing prominent senators on the flimsiest of charges. Cassius Dio grimly noted that listing all the people Commodus killed would make his history far too tedious. The power vacuum was filled by his praetorian prefect, Tigidius Perennis, who ran the empire while Commodus retreated further into debauchery. But in a paranoid court, no one is safe for long. A few years later, Perennis was accused of plotting to make his own son emperor, and Commodus had him and his family executed. His next favorite, the freedman Marcus Aurelius Cleandur, rose to become the most powerful man in Rome, selling public offices and governorships to the highest bidder. His corruption led to a grain shortage and riots. The starving mob marched on Commodus's villa, demanding Cleandur's head. Terrified, Commodus sacrificed his powerful minister to the crowd. With each plot, real or imagined, Commodus grew more isolated, more cruel, and more detached from reality. The guileless young man was gone, replaced by a tyrant who saw enemies everywhere. The Roman elite feared him, but for a time, he stayed popular with the common people and the army, thanks to lavish games and handouts. But his rule was cracking, and the emperor himself was starting to believe he was something more than a man. As Commodus abandoned the job of emperor, he embraced a terrifying new identity. He was the living reincarnation of the mythological hero Hercules. This wasn't just a quirky affectation. It was a profound psychological obsession that defined the rest of his reign. Statues began popping up across the empire showing him not in an emperor's toga, but as Hercules, wearing a lion's skin and carrying a club. This was radical. Previous emperors were made gods after they died. Commodus demanded to be worshipped as a living god. By identifying with Hercules, he was also claiming to be the son of Jupiter, king of the gods, and rejecting his mortal father, Marcus Aurelius. His megalomania spiraled. After a major fire in Rome in 191 AD, he saw a chance to remake the city in his own image. Declaring himself a new Romulus, he decreed that Rome should be renamed Colonia Commodiana, the colony of Commodus. But he didn't stop there. He attempted to rename the 12 months of the year after his own string of titles: Lucius, Aelius, Aurelius, Commodus, and so on. The legions were to be the Legions Commodianae, and the Senate was retitled the Commodian Fortunate Senate. While these changes were mostly ignored and didn't last, they show the depths of his delusion. His fantasy reached its most bizarre expression at the Colossus of Nero, a giant bronze statue near the Colosseum. Commodus had the statue's head removed and replaced with a portrait of himself, adding a club and a bronze lion at its feet to complete the Hercules look. An inscription boasted that he was the only left-handed fighter to conquer 12 times 1,000 men. This descent into godhood was a political strategy. By making himself divine, he placed himself above the Senate, above tradition, and above the law. The senators were forced to play along. Cassius Dio recalls being forced to attend his spectacles and shout scripted praises. They watched in horror as their emperor abandoned all dignity. The man meant to be the stoic guardian of the empire had become its chief performer, a deluded actor playing God on the world's biggest stage, the Colosseum. The Roman Colosseum had always been a place of brutal spectacle, but under Commodus, it became his personal playground of cruelty and ego. This is where his divine delusions and bloodlust merged into a terrifying public display. Dressed as Hercules, he would enter the arena himself. But these were no true contests. His opponents were gladiators armed with wooden swords, who knew that even scratching the emperor meant certain death. They would submit easily, allowing the god to claim victory. For these staged wins, he charged the state treasury a fortune for each appearance, essentially paying himself to star in his own games. His real passion was for the Venetians, the wild beast hunts. But again, these were not displays of courage. He would stand on a protected platform, safely out of harm's way, and pick off animals with a bow and javelin. He slaughtered exotic creatures from every corner of the empire: giraffes, elephants, rhinos, and hippos. According to Cassius Dio, he once shot the heads off ostriches as they ran past. To many Romans, who revered true martial skill, this was just embarrassing. But the most depraved spectacles were reserved for human beings. He turned the arena into a stage for mass murder. One account from Cassius Dio claims he took citizens who had lost their feet, tethered them together, and clubbed them to death, pretending they were mythical giants. He presided over countless executions where prisoners of war and criminals were used as props in his bloody shows. The sands of the arena, meant for the honorable combat of warriors, were soaked with the blood of the defenseless, all for the amusement of a single, unhinged man. In November of 192 AD, he held the Plebeian Games, a 2-week spectacle of his own magnificence. Every morning, he shot animals from his platform. Every afternoon, he fought as a gladiator, winning every time. This was the peak of his madness. He had alienated the Senate, horrified the elite, and was bankrupting the state. His inner circle knew the show had to end. The end for Commodus came on the last day of the year, 192 AD. His ego had reached an intolerable new peak. He announced he would start the new year not from the imperial palace in traditional robes, but from the gladiators' barracks, dressed in armor. He planned to march out with his fellow fighters, a final, ultimate insult to Roman tradition. He told this plan to his inner circle, his favorite concubine, Marcia, the Praetorian prefect, Quintus Aemilius Laetus, and his chamberlain, Eclectus. They begged him not to do it, but he was enraged by their opposition. That evening, Marcia reportedly found a list of people Commodus planned to execute. Her name was at the top, along with Laetus and Eclectus. The choice was simple: kill or be killed. The plot was set for New Year's Eve. Marcia brought Commodus his usual glass of wine, but this time it was poisoned. The emperor drank it, but his constitution was strong. He became nauseous and vomited most of it up, surviving the attempt. The conspirators were now desperate. Their plot was blown. They needed to act fast. So they turned to the one person who could get close to the emperor without suspicion: his personal trainer and wrestling partner, a strong athlete named Narcissus. Promised a huge reward, Narcissus agreed. He went to the emperor's chambers, where Commodus was in his bath, likely weak from the poison. There, in the steam and water, the powerful wrestler lunged at the emperor, who thought he was a god. He strangled the life out of the man who believed he was Hercules reborn. Lucius Aurelius Commodus was dead at 31. The Nerve Antonine dynasty, which had given Rome its golden age, died with him. The news of Commodus's death was met with euphoria in the Senate. The man who had terrorized them for over a decade was gone. They declared him a public enemy, an act known as damnatio memoriae. His name was to be scraped from public inscriptions and his statues torn down. However, this condemnation wasn't immediate and was later reversed by the Emperor Septimius Severus, who, for political reasons, had the Senate deify Commodus to strengthen his own connection to Marcus Aurelius. But the damage was done. Commodus's reign was a catastrophic turning point. His neglect of governance, his purges of talented officials, and his lavish spending left the empire politically unstable and economically weak. He debased the currency, a move that contributed to the economic crises that would plague Rome for the next century. Most devastatingly, his death created a power vacuum that plunged the empire into chaos. The conspirators' choice for a successor, a respected senator named Pertinax, lasted only a few months before he was murdered. What followed was the Year of the Five Emperors, a bloody civil war. The peace Marcus Aurelius had fought so hard to maintain was shattered. Commodus is remembered as one of history's great villains, a cruel, sadistic, and deluded tyrant. His story is a chilling reminder of how absolute power can corrupt absolutely, and how the leadership of one person can help bring a golden age to a crashing halt. He inherited a kingdom of gold, and, through his vanity and cruelty, left behind an empire of iron and rust. If you want to explore more of the dramatic lives that shaped the Roman Empire, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. What other infamous Roman figures should we cover next? Let us know in the comments. And if you found this journey into the dark heart of Rome compelling, please give this video a like. It helps us bring more of these stories to light. If Commodus could throw prisoners to lions for sport, imagine what other horrors emperors and queens unleashed on their own people. Don't step out of the arena yet. Hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another chapter of history's bloodiest reigns. And if this story shocked you, wait until you watch the next one. The Queen Who Ate Human Hearts, the dark legend of Empress Isabella of Portugal. Click the link above to watch.